Welcome to the Good Growing Podcast. I am Chris Enroth, horticulture educator at the University of Illinois Extension, coming at you from Macomb, Illinois, and we have got a great show for you today. Invasive species. Dun, dun, dun. Well, it's fall, which means it's time maybe to be doing some treatments of some invasive species, and we have new ones to add to the list. But you know I'm not doing this by myself. I am joined, as always, every single week by horticulture educator Ken Johnson in Jacksonville. Hey, Ken.
Hello, Chris. Got some nice warm weather, at least today. I think the rest of the week, so good time to get out there and do some management.
That's true. You'll be sweating doing management today after dealing with some, at least in my neck of the woods, we finally hit that frost point. And so my peppers are at least no more. My tomatoes, oddly enough, still hanging on. I don't think they're going to do anything more, but they're still there, still enjoying this warm weather that we're getting right now. How about yourself?
Well, I never checked. We were supposed to get down to the upper 20s. So we went out and harvested all the tomatoes and peppers on the plants, and everything still looks good. Beans, they've lost a lot of their flowers, but at the tips, they're still green, still putting out flowers. Mm-hmm. The blackberry we have still has fruit on it. It's still putting out flowers. So it's never going to end.
Never ending growing season, I guess. Yeah, not the worst problem in the world, but winter can arrive anytime for us.
Yeah, we got everything picked, so there's really nothing to save anymore. So
yeah,
and the ginger we've got the plastic on there. I went out there at lunch today, and it was uncomfortably warm in that tunnel.
Yeah. Our ginger is all picked and harvested. I have gave it all out as Halloween candy this year, so but actually I still have I have 4 flats worth in my basement still live plants that will be grown out for next year's crop. And then I'm going to use the remainder. I think I have like a couple pounds worth of ginger rhizomes that I'm going to process. I'm going to try making like a couple different things. We're gonna freeze some. We're going to maybe try that candied recipe that you use, and then we're going to powder some. So we're going to do a couple different things with our ginger this year.
Make some ginger ale.
That would be very nice. I would love having some homemade ginger ale.
We tried it one year. It didn't work very well.
No. Okay,
that's probably more operator error than anything, but.
Just add more sugar. That's what makes it all good. Well, Ken, we are today reacting to some news put out by the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, and that is they have added a couple. By a couple, I mean like what, 8 or 9 new plants to the invasive species list, which has a more formal official name, the Exotic Weeds Act. So if you would get onto the internets and type it in, you'd probably want to type in the Illinois Exotic Weeds Act to get a more the official formal language of this. But we'll leave a link below to the press release that came out of these new species being added to this list. Now, they're not all new to me. I don't know, Ken, or any of these new to you, some of these species that we're seeing?
I think I've heard of all of them except for 2.
Mm-hmm.
But familiar with probably only 3 of them, 4 of them. Others I've heard of, but I've never seen them in person. We'll put it that way.
Some of these new species, I mean, let's dive right into what is effective right now. And of the list that they gave, all but one, this rule goes into effect right now. So the ones that are immediately considered invasive species of Illinois, or exotic weeds, we'll say that. The first one is Tree of Heaven. Now, I know, Ken, you're probably familiar with that, especially with our conversation about the spotted lanternfly we had last month.
Yeah, that's one. You've heard of it, but now with spotted lanternfly getting more attention, you hear about that a lot more often. So this is one was originally grown as an ornamental, Like a lot of plants, a lot of our invasive species are brought in intentionally, whether it be ornamental, soil stabilization, what have you, and then escape and cause far more problems than they're worth. So, tree of heaven is one. It's kind of a trash tree. You find it all over the place, like growing in sidewalk cracks and alleys, and you name it. It can grow. It can grow there.
Mhm.
So, one of the reasons why a lot of these things are invasive or exotic or whatever we want to call them, is they do very well in a lot of times less than ideal conditions, so they can take over rather easily. So, yeah.
Well, every morning, at least last year, when I dropped my kid off at school, there was a house that had a tree of heaven in the front yard. And I'm not sure what prompted them to do it, but they cut it down, which I can only imagine must have smelled terrible if you were the arborist cutting that tree down, because tree of heaven is known to have a very foul scent. I do have some popping up in my backyard. And if you are ever curious, because it has a compound leaf, and I have a lot of black walnut, which also has a compound leaf. And if you're ever curious, they both have very distinct and dissimilar smells from each other. Black walnut, I find it a very pungent but pleasant odor for black walnut. Tree of heaven, no, does not smell good. I can't imagine what it smells like if you're running that thing through a chipper shredder. Must not smell good at all. But the interesting thing is, after they cut the tree down, they ground the stump out. And then the whole lawn today is it's like a lawn of tree of heaven. And so without the use of herbicide, basically what they have to do is sort of just mow until that root system exhausts itself. Unfortunately, the sprouts are also showing up across the sidewalk in a fence line. And so you can just see how this one sole singular tree has now been cut down and turned into this absolute beast, and is going to pretty much colonize this fence line unless someone does something about it. And well, maybe we'll get into this later when we talk about what this means for these plants. But yeah, we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I'll say until I really started paying attention, we've got a walnut. Neighbors on either side of us have walnut trees, and I just thought we had walnut seedlings popping up everywhere. Until one day I just pull them. Until one day I smelled it. I was like, wait a second. Mm-hmm. This is not walnut.
That's not a walnut.
This is awful.
Yeah. Yes.
It's almost kind of like cat pee.
Mm-hmm. Musky cat pee that's been sitting in a 1970s shag carpet.
In 90-degree weather.
90-degree weather. Yeah. Yeah. That's the best way to describe it. Another one, which I think we're all familiar with. In fact, we have our book that I use this all the time, The Management of Invasive Plants and Pests of Illinois. Ken's got it too, right next to him. Even though when this was written, officially, legally speaking, these plants were not invasive. But look what's on the cover here. This is garlic mustard. It is now legally saying this is an invasive species in Illinois. But we've known it was gonna. It should have been for many years, because we've had it on the cover of our book for years. Garlic mustard, yeah. This one showed up because, true to its name, you can eat it. It tastes kind of garlic, kind of mustardy flavor. You can turn it into kind of a tasty pesto, but it's a biennial. And so it really starts out a little hidden down by the soil level, this little rosette growing at the soil plane. And then the next year it shoots up that the vegetative or reproductive leaves and the leaf stalk, or the reproductive stalk, flowers, and then boom, seeds. And so, yeah, garlic mustard, been around for a while, now finally deemed legally invasive in Illinois.
Yeah, this is one that was, purposely introduced as a pot herb, so people growing in their gardens to use, and it's gotten away from us. Mm-hmm. Find it in usually like forested areas.
Yeah,
forest
areas.
Mm-hmm. And it exudes chemicals that inhibits the growth of other plants, so you get these large monocultures of it.
Yeah, we used to do garlic mustard polls, but then I think there was more research that came out in later on from there that suggested that maybe this plant might just sort of self implode on itself over time, that it might just spread, and then it might just sort of just maybe just kind of vanish into the background. And so we don't really do much garlic mustard pulls anymore, at least not very frequently. I still pull it when I come across it, though.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, then the next one on the list is Leafy spurge. And I don't know if I'd heard of this one. I mean, I've heard of spurges before, maybe not this one specifically, but this one, pastures, grassland areas, roadsides, things like that, is where it can cause some issues. So yeah, was this the one? Yes, yeah. So according to there's a USDA NRCS land guide for this. Cattle and horses avoid leafy spurge, the milky sap which contains ingenol. Toxic compound can cause severe diarrhea and weakness in cattle and horses forced to consume it. Can cause blistering and hair loss around horses' hooves. Can be irritating to the skin, eyes, and digestive tracts of humans and other animals. Sheep and goats tend to be less bothered by it.
Yeah, I mean, goats can eat practically anything, it seems like, but I have definitely seen this one probably out in pastures. I feel like I've even seen it in in a garden center or something. It does have these like yellow, sort of like cup-shaped flowers, bowl-shaped flowers, and I think they can be pretty persistent. And I know that when they set seed, that seed can last for quite a bit of time in the soil. And so it would be, I think with all of these, it's pretty much a long-term battle that you're facing with them. But leafy spurge can really show up years after you think you might have gotten it eradicated. So interestingly, in this book, it says that the U.S. Department of Agriculture has shown success using 6 natural enemies of leafy spurge imported from Europe. These include a stem and root boring beetle, 4 root mining flea beetles, and a shoot tip gall midge in controlling these. So I guess we've already deployed some biologicals against this particular plant, and looks like they're going to do large scale field rearing and release programs in many northern states.
Yeah, and it's pointing it out with like a lot of these natural enemies, biological control. Probably we're not going to wipe it out, but it will help slow the spread. Maybe reduce those populations. Kind of same thing with emerald ash borer. They've released parasitoids and stuff like that. We're not eliminating it, but hopefully slowing the spread a little bit.
All right. Well, this next one on the list is one that I have seen and I'm seeing more frequently, and that is Sericea Lespedeza. This is one that I know has, especially as in the counties to the south of me, like in Ken's County, and it has been creeping northward. It's been found where I am in southern McDonough County, and it is a big problem for people with CRP, Conservation Reserve Program, where people set aside ag land to conserve that soil for future use. What we would want to see are more native grasses and wildflowers. But what has been happening more with this Sericea Lespedeza is that this just shows up, and of all the things we use to manage our prairies, essentially, which is what we want to see on a lot of CRP or sometimes timber, is we use fire. And fire actually promotes the growth of Sericea Lespedeza. And it has become a very troublesome weed. A lot of biologists are very concerned about it. They're not quite sure, in what direction we need to go on such a large scale that they're dealing with this particular plant. However, I think right now what most of the recommendations, how they go, is basically use fire to promote the plant, and then after you get a flush of growth of Sericea, you then hit it with an herbicide to try to kill it. And so it's sort of like make it real happy with fire and then try to kill it with herbicide.
I don't remember how many years ago now. So I went out to a bit of field visit, and I didn't know what it was. So I sent off pictures, and I think there was multiple problematic weeds in this field. Yeah. Sericea Lespedeza was one of them here in more. It was placed in Morgan County, so
Yeah.
we do have it here.
Well, and I was visiting with the farmer about 2 months ago, and we're out in his back 40 there in some of his CRP area, and he said Sericea is just one of those. It is very fine textured plants where it sort of hides in the prairie. You don't see it until it really just begins to explode into this group, or this mass. And then Ken, I think you and I were in Springfield in September, and we were at the a park, and this particular park had a prairie area, and the whole prairie was essentially Sericea Lespedeza. And they were basically starting over from scratch with that.
Yeah, that was everywhere.
Trying to think if I have a picture I can throw in. I don't know if I do, but I'll see if I can track one down for you.
Yeah, I don't think I took take any pictures. I should have.
I was just my mouth dropped open like, wow.
It's usually what I take pictures of. That's the problem. It's not the good stuff.
I know, yeah.
All right, our next new exotic weed here in Illinois is Japanese stiltgrass. So this one is an annual grass that is native to Asia. So this one I actually found was first reported in 1919, introduced as packing material for imported porcelain from China. First documented in Tennessee, it has now spread throughout a good chunk of the eastern United States. And with this one, it kind of looks almost bamboo-ish. We look at least got the wider leaves and stuff, at least when I look at it. I think kind of looks like bamboo to me anyway. And this one, plants can produce 1,000 seeds every year, so very prolific seed producer. They're smaller seeds, so they move rather easily in the environment. That's on, somebody walking through, pick them up on them, animals floating on water, vehicles, what have you. And they can remain viable up to 5 years in the soil, so they can stick around for a decent amount of time too. So, and then you could say you find, pictures out there where they die back, and it's just the ground is matted when you have this real high concentrations, and kind of potentially chokes out other stuff because of that. So, because other one, smaller populations you can hand pull, or basically just, since it's an annual, trying to prevent seed formation.
I've definitely seen stiltgrass before. I probably might even have it in the ditch or something when growing near the house, but yeah, I have not had to deal with it personally in terms of control, but I know I've been seeing it around more. Well, the next plant on the list is the Amur corktree. And this is an interesting one. It looks a lot like Tree of Heaven, I think. The bark looks like it, but the branching is different. So if you're looking at this, the bark looks similar to Tree of Heaven, at least young trees do. But the Tree of Heaven, it has an alternate bud or branching habit, whereas the Amur corktree has opposite leaves. And also the leaves of Amur corktree, I think they look more like a bush honeysuckle leaf, where they have that acuminate, or sort of that pinched tip of the leaves. And of course I did the odor, when in doubt, scratch the tree and sniff it if it smells, as we described it before, cat pee in a 1970 shag carpet that's been sitting there for months. Probably dealing with Tree of Heaven. But it came over to the U.S. in 1850, more than likely ornamental tree. It's also a functional tree, so if you peel off the bark, it actually has this bright yellow tissue beneath it, and is used for dyes, like a natural dye. As the tree gets older, the bark on it will develop into this more spongy cork-like texture, so yeah, it has been here for a while, but I think you see it a lot more out in the Northeast and in other areas like that. But you can find it here in Illinois, most definitely.
Yeah, this is one of those I've heard of, but I don't know. I've not knowingly seen. I may have seen it, but I just didn't know what I was looking at.
The problem is once you figure it out, once you
see it everywhere.
You'll see it everywhere.
All right, and then our last two. These are two I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, me either.
I'm not sure I'd heard of them before this release came out. And this is black and pale swallow-wort. So just doing a little looking before we started recording here. So this is from University of Minnesota, talking about pale swallow-wort. Non-native plant that has been found in Minnesota, also in Illinois, is an herbaceous perennial vining milkweed originating from southern Europe. Leaves are believed to be fatal to monarch caterpillars, which mistake them for native milkweeds. So vining plant, vines can get 6 feet long. I think it's the same for black swallow-wort as well. So they're basically they're kind of choking out other stuff. Mechanical control easily breaks when hand pulled. Roots can be dug out and disposed of, but you need to continue monitoring. Can reroot from those chunks left behind the soil. Mowing is not recommended as it likely spreads the seeds. The seeds are kind of like milkweed seeds. They've got the fluff on them, and they'll float away and stuff airborne. And then herbicide, like these others, the glyphosate, triclopyr, something like that, while plants are in flowering, or they can be the cut and apply to the stem. And what was it? Another name for black swallow-wort is dog stranglevine. So that gives you an indication of maybe what their growth habit is like, binding and choking stuff out.
Yeah. It is basically a plant. Any plant part can resprout and form a new plant. So yeah, just if you do have this one to control, you pretty much just need to get it out. Don't compost it. Don't do anything. It's got to be burned or sent to the landfill.
And this is one. It was first cultivated in greenhouses in the mid 1800s in Ipswich at the Harvard Botanic Garden in Essex County, Massachusetts. And then in 1864, plant collector in Essex County, Massachusetts, recorded as, quote, escaping from the Botanic Garden, where it is a weed and promising to become naturalized. And it has.
Sure enough.
Rather successfully.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's unfortunate. But yes, I mean, all of these plants, because of their nature, makes them invasive in our natural areas. Now, everything we've just listed, this rule takes into effect right now. As soon as it was read, boom, these plants are considered invasive. But there is one that this does not take effect until January 1st, 2028. Ken, drum roll, please. What is that plant?
That is good old Callery, or sometimes called Bradford pear, which is just a cultivar of Callery pear. And I think we should say we'll get a little more into this and a little bit about the definition. So the Exotic Weed Act, for this, it is illegal for anyone to buy, sell, distribute, or plant any of these listed species without a permit. So you cannot buy them, sell, trade, plant, whatever, but you don't have to manage them. That's an important distinction here. You can't. So just because you have Callery pear doesn't mean you have to cut it down. I would argue you should, but legally you do not have to. And until January 1st, 2028, you can still buy it in Illinois. Again, I would encourage you to reconsider that. Don't go out and buy as many as you can because you can't buy them anymore. Resist that temptation and don't do that. And I think the reason is that it's because there's a lot of nursery stock around. So it's been delayed for a couple of years.
Yeah. I wonder if I'm going to see a lot of Callery pear with for sale signs on them. Highly discounted material.
Fire sale.
There you go. Yeah. Speaking of fire, these do get, they're in the rose family, so they do get diseases. A lot of the ones around me have fire blight, which I joyfully just sit back and watch as these plants just die from fire blight.
Me too.
Yeah. And I'm like, hey, you know what? You should prune that fire blight out, and then don't clean your pruners and go prune that other Callery pear over there, because it's a bacteria that can be spread with your pruners. But don't do that, folks, if it's not yours, because you might get in trouble. So
then turn the mister on and they keep it nice and wet.
There you go. Yes. Yeah. Fingers crossed for a hailstorm, because hail damage actually will spread fire blight throughout the entire canopy. It's just so cool, because hail creates a wound, bacteria can enter the wound, boom, there you go.
So Callery Pear is another one that was intentionally introduced. It's been brought into U.S. Multiple times. So originally in 1909, Arnold Arboretum in Harvard. Again, Harvard causing problems again. Mm-hmm. Don't come after me, Harvard. And then again, in 1916, USDA brought in hopes of developing fire blight resistance to our common pear we eat. And Callery Pear is used as a rootstock for those edible pears. But then in the 1950s, kind of gained interest as an ornamental value, as we're building more kind of that post-war housing. And these are quick growing trees that have pretty flowers if you ignore the smell and stuff. So, and the original cultivar was Bradford, and these are not still fruitful, so they're not producing fruit. But then as we start introducing more and more cultivars and stuff, they can cross pollinate. We start getting viable fruit, and then these really start kind of escaping cultivation. I think, but was it by the 1980s? It was the second most popular tree in the U.S. So a lot of places, new housing development, every house has got a Bradford or Callery Pear planted in it.
I'd say in 2010, when I was doing landscaping, we still were planting them everywhere out in Kansas. So I got to cut down a lot of Callery Pears to make up for that sin there, my penance. So I do find Callery Pear growing randomly in my landscape beds. And at first I was like, what is this? Is this a cherry? I'm not sure. It's smooth barked. But now the more familiar I've become with seeing this plant, I realize, it's just another Callery Pear seedling sprouting in my landscape bed. So it is one of those that I think it takes you by surprise once you like see it, and it sort of just jumps out at you like, whoa, I had no idea it would have traveled this deep into the woods. But sure enough, it does. And then you start looking around you and you start seeing it more and more frequently.
Yeah, especially in the spring, if you're driving along interstate, especially when you get around, for me, you get around driving down the St. Louis area from Jacksonville on 155, the whole side of the interstate in areas is white, and that's Callery Pear blooming. And it also hold on to its leaves longer than a lot of our native species. So if you've got trees, as our native species start dropping leaves, Callery Pear can sometimes kind of stick out too, because it's holding those leaves a little bit longer sometimes.
And so you had described this, Ken, as, what does it mean to be in the Illinois Exotic Weed Act? Can't sell it, can't buy it, don't plant it. But that's really it. That's really the only restriction that you have in terms of enforcement. It's really enforcement of like the nursery trade. We don't want to see this in for sale anymore. But otherwise, there's nothing else. There is another list out there. It's called the Noxious Weed List. And this, I don't think this necessarily targets non-native plants, because there's other plants like ragweed on the Noxious Weed List, but it's the Noxious Weed Act. And in this particular list of plants for Illinois, and I don't know if this particular list has ever been updated for years, but it's got plants that, if found growing on your property, there would be a regulatory force to say you need to control this. So like example, ragweed is one of them. Ragweed is a native. Ragweed's actually kind of an important native plant for some of our ground foraging birds. So wind pollinated, but what it does do is it gives us allergies. A lot of people are allergic to ragweed because it is a wind pollinated plant. And so when you're in like a city or a human occupied area, it would make sense to be able to say, hey, you need to control this ragweed. A lot of people are sneezing, I guess, right now. You're making people miserable. There's other ones out there, though, too, like cannabis. If they say, hey, you're not allowed to grow that on your property. It's a noxious weed, and we have the enforcement ability to tell you to get rid of this plant.
Yeah, and say for the ragweed, that's only for within city limits or incorporated areas. So if you live out in the quote unquote country, it would not be considered noxious weed if it's the city limits. So so there's a document, Illinois regulations regarding invasive plant species, and we can link to this. It kind of gives a I guess a regular, not non-lawyer definition of this stuff. And I'll just read for the noxious weed law. This law, administered by the director of the Illinois Department of Agriculture, gives county governments the authority and responsibility to survey for, control, and govern the distribution of noxious weeds within their jurisdiction. The law also provides an avenue for the establishment of both a weed control superintendent and a noxious weed control fund within each county. Depending on the situation, new infestations will be managed by the landowner, by the county, and billed to the landowner. The county and the landowner split the costs or at the expense of the county. So you are legally required to manage these, and it's up to the individual counties to enforce this. And say enforcement can be spotty.
Yeah,
in the state.
Mostly non-existent. We actually, extension, we do get a lot of pushback on this one from people that tell us, why aren't we out there enforcing this more? So just FYI, as Ken just read, it's the counties. We're an educational group. Yes. We aren't out there handing tickets out. Yeah, I don't want that job. So
Yeah, but you mentioned ragweed's so common, and giant ragweed again within city limits. Marijuana, musk thistle, Canada thistle, kudzu, perennial sow thistle, the perennial sorghums like Johnson grass. I think those are it. Mm-hmm. So again, those you have to, by law, you are supposed to manage those.
Yeah. But for the other list, the Exotic Weed Act, the invasive species, we're still going to talk about and encourage homeowners and landowners to control those, even if there is no necessarily regulatory requirement for you to do so, because the big issue with invasive species is that it limits biodiversity in our natural systems, and we need biodiversity for resilience in our natural systems. And so, yes, on this show today and in future shows, if we talk invasive species, we're going to also tell you how to kill them.
Yeah. And there's also the Illinois injurious species rule, which is one that rarely ever gets talked about, at least in my experience. Mm-hmm. So again, just reading from this document, this law, administered by the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, does not only focus on weeds, but also regulates injurious animals. It is illegal for any species on this list to be possessed, propagated, bought, sold, bartered, or offered to be bought, sold, bartered, transported, traded, transferred, or loaned to any other person or institution unless a permit is first obtained, except persons engaged in interstate transport for lawful commercial purposes who do not buy, sell, barter, trade, transfer, loan, or offer to do so in Illinois may transport injurious species across Illinois without injurious species permit from the department. That's a really long sentence.
My goodness, what are your legal fees for that one, Ken? My gosh.
And there's a lot of plants. I think all of the ones I'm listed on here are plants, so I'm not going to read all of them because there's a lot of like mosquito fern, flowering rush, Mediterranean killer algae.
Nice.
Probably a good one to have. Anchored water hyacinth hydrilla, Chinese water spinach, yellow flag iris, oxygen weed, arrow leaf, parrot feather, Eurasian water milfoil. A lot of these are more aquatic stuff. Mm-hmm. Duck lettuce, curly leaf pondweed, giant Sylvinia, a bunch of those different species. Water soldier, water chestnut. So you can't grow those either.
Well, I guess we need to bring this list up when we talk ponds next time. In essence, I guess, everyone, there's a lot of lists out there, or at least in Illinois, there's 3. An official list. And I know people will call certain plants invasive They might say, yeah, Virginia creeper, that's invasive. No, it's aggressive in our book, but legally, to be called invasive, we have to have it on this exotic weed list. I think the term that we've come up with, though, species of concern, though, can talk about some non-natives that haven't been listed yet, which are still in our book, but they're of concern, and hopefully one day they will be listed. And I'm sure some of you are like screaming or ready to type something in, like, "Well, what about burning bush?" Yeah, it's in the book to control. Just is not on the list yet.
Yeah, and I know when this got posted on social media, there's a lot of people throwing out, yeah, what about burning bush? Teasel is one. I think teasel is on the exotic species list. So these are the exotic weed act, those listed plants. These are the 9 new ones, but there are others: teasel, Russian olive, autumn olive, buckthorn, giant hogweed,
all the honeysuckles,
knotweed, multiflora rose, purple loosestrife, and others. So there are others, but again, a lot of these they're not being sold anyway, or given away. Yeah, there are kind of these set in, and I think we're both guilty of it too. There are kind of these defined definitions of what invasive and things are, but we kind of use some of these terms interchangeably. So like invasive, and so February 3rd, 1999, Executive Order 13112, signed by President Clinton, established National Invasive Species Council, and they define an invasive species as a non-native or alien to the ecosystem under consideration, and a species whose introduction causes or is likely to cause economic harm, environmental harm, or harm to human health. So by this definition, to be invasive has to be non-native, introduced either intentionally or unintentionally, doesn't matter how it got here, and likely it does or is likely to cause environmental or economic harm or harm to humans. So yeah, then you're getting into your native. So native plants right off the bat cannot by definition be native because they are, or it can't be invasive because they are native to that area. And even native, that definition, what exactly is the definition of native? One is, a plant that is part of the balance of nature and has developed over hundreds or thousands of years in a particular region or ecosystem. It's evolved in a specific geographical area. Usually, a lot of times defined as growing wild when scientific collection began in the area.
Yeah.
So, like you talk about, invasive natives, poison ivy, that's a native plant. But it's not invasive. So it's just problematic.
I do go back and forth with some people over Osage orange, which is also known as like the hedge apple. And I think when during European settlement, I don't think it was necessarily found as far north as Illinois. They believe the ones that they did find were brought up from the south by Native Americans, but there's more historical evidence before that to show that Osage orange was present in like Illinois before the last ice age, and that after the ice age, we lost a lot of the megafauna, which would be seed dispersers like the giant sloth, the mammoth, all that, and which then kind of pushed Osage orange down south, and it was not able to really naturally return back to the northern part of the continent. So I still say it is, I still would call it a native tree in my neck of the woods.
Native-ish. Yeah, I think most maps show it as Texas, Oklahoma, a little bit of Arkansas.
Yeah.
As a native region. And like even stuff bald cypress, that's like extreme southern Illinois, is its northern extent naturally, but humans have spread it further north. So native to Illinois, but a very small portion at the southern tip of Illinois. And like even things like sunflowers, sunflowers are native to North America, and indigenous Americans spread them far and wide, but I believe they're native to, was it Mexico? And they've been spread by humans
Fun with definitions and putting living things in categories, and some of those living things don't read like us humans do.
Exactly.
Well, Ken, whenever I'm talking invasive species and exasperated people throw up their hands and say, why do we in the U.S. have to deal with all of these invasive species? Are we sending our own native species out to other continents? And they seem to be kind of happy when I say, yes, we are. The whole planet is dealing with invasive species. And so, they seem to almost take a little bit of satisfaction in that. I'm like, well, no, we shouldn't be happy about that. We don't want to necessarily be doing that. Acer negundo, which is box elder maple, red oak, some of like goldenrod. Oh, it's a terrible weed across the Atlantic and the other continents, Europe and Asia. So we have a lot of species that have left the North American continent and crossed over the oceans in either direction and become huge problems in other parts of the world.
Yeah, it was, I think, Colorado potato beetle in Europe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Some army worms and stuff, and other Africa and other parts of the world. So yeah, we're sending just as much stuff. We are sending it just as much elsewhere. We just don't hear about it because it's not affecting us. It's native here. They can be pests, but they're not nearly as bad a pest as they would be other places. Just like, emerald ash borer. Minor pest, there wasn't a whole lot of research done on it until it showed up in the U.S. and Europe when it starts wiping out trees, because in its native range, it's managed by natural enemies. The native ash trees evolved with it. Yeah,
so no reason to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, I think the story goes is that back during the Cold War, the Soviet Union accused the U.S. of dropping Colorado potato beetle into their country, and I don't know if the U.S. has confirmed or denied that claim, but I remember that being a big deal, at least if you lived in the Soviet Union back then, because potatoes kind of a big deal over in Russia. Yeah,
it's a two-way street. We just don't hear about it coming from us.
Well, that was a lot of great information about the new invasive species that have been added to the Illinois Exotic Weed Act. We'll have additional resources for you in the show notes down below if you want to learn more about them and their controls and the other species that might also be listed on the Illinois Exotic Weed Act. Well, the Good Growing Podcast is a production of University of Illinois Extension, edited this week by me, Chris Enroth. Hey, Ken. Thanks for hanging out with me today and going through this list of new plants that we can, well, not new, we've already known about them, but fresh plants added to the invasive species list that we can call them invasive officially now.
Yep, I'm going to have to go start looking at pictures and brush up on my ID, make sure I'm properly identifying them now.
So I don't care if it's a Amur corktree or if it's a tree of heaven. If it's got bark like that, just kill it. I'm glad they added them both at the same time.
Let's do this again next week.
Oh, we shall do this again next week. The Horticultural Hijinks continues, the Good Growing Podcast. So we'll see what happens. It's getting to be turkey month now. So I'm going to get out the sweaters, bust out the soup. I don't know what to say at the end anymore. Well, listeners, thank you for doing what you do best, and that is listening. Or if you watched us on YouTube, watching. And as always, keep on growing.